The atmosphere in the government command center was electric with a mix of anxiety and excitement. The planet Verdana, a human colony located at the frontier of explored space, had never seen an alien vessel approach their orbit before. The room buzzed as military and political leaders gathered around the central holoscreen, displaying the sleek and imposing alien craft that hung silently above their world. Commander Jack Mason, a seasoned military officer with years of experience on the frontier, was the first to break the silence. "Has there been any communication?" he asked, his voice cutting sharply through the murmurs. Lieutenant Gareth Reynolds, responsible for communications, adjusted his headset before responding. "Yes, sir. They've sent a greeting in several linguistic patterns. We've managed to parse it. It's a message of peace and dialogue." Across the room, Dr. Alan Harris, a top xenobiologist, whispered to his aide. "Remarkable. First real proof we're not alone in the universe, and they come bearing olive branches." Jack turned to face the assembly. "Peace or not, we need to keep our guard up. Reynolds, set up a meeting. I want to meet this alien, face to face, use the universal gestures of diplomacy." "Already on it, Commander." Gareth nodded, tapping commands into his console. The preparations were swift. Within hours, a delegation was arranged to meet Kale, the alien emissary, in a secure facility. Jack was chosen to lead, given his diplomatic experience and military background. As the alien ship opened, a ramp descended, and a figure emerged. Kale was tall, his skin a shimmering silver, with eyes that reflected a deep cosmic wisdom. He wore a simple tunic that seemed to ripple with colors that had no name in the human spectrum. "Welcome to Verdana, Kale. I'm Commander Jack Mason." Jack extended his hand, a gesture of earthly goodwill. Kale mimicked the gesture, his hand cool and smooth. "Thank you, Commander. I am here to foster understanding between our peoples." The conversation moved to a high-security meeting room, where Jack, Kale, and their respective teams sat across from each other. Jack's team consisted of Dr. Harris, Gareth, and several military advisors. Kale was alone, his demeanor calm and collected. "Why come to us?" Dr. Harris asked, leaning forward. "You must have observed us. What made you decide we were ready for this?" "Our observations concluded that humanity stands at a crucial juncture," Kale explained, his voice a melody of chimes. "Your technology, your culture, and your spirit show potential for great achievements or significant perils." Jack eyed the alien, his instincts tingling with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "What exactly are you offering?" "Knowledge, Commander. Shared learning to avert the perils and achieve the marvels. However, trust must be the foundation of this new relationship." Kale's eyes fixed on Jack with an intensity that felt almost palpable. Jack nodded slowly, turning to look at his team. "And if we refuse?" "Then I leave, and your civilization will continue as it has, with whatever end that entails." Kale's tone remained neutral, giving nothing away. The room fell silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on everyone present. Jack finally spoke. "We'll consider your offer. But know this, Kale. Verdana is under my protection. Any false moves, and we'll respond accordingly." Kale nodded, a gesture that seemed laden with respect. "Understood, Commander. I admire your commitment to your people." As the alien departed, Jack turned to his team. "Keep an eye on him. Reynolds, set up surveillance. Harris, I want a full analysis of everything he says. We're not diving into this blind." "Understood, sir," they responded in unison. Jack watched the alien return to his ship, a myriad of thoughts racing through his mind. This first contact could change everything, and he had to ensure humanity came out of it on top. In the dim light of her small, cluttered office, Alara meticulously laid out her tools. The walls were lined with screens displaying various angles of Kale's daily routines, which she had been monitoring closely since his arrival. Alara, known for her precision and unwavering focus, was a top assassin for the government's covert operations. This job, however, was unlike any she had undertaken before. On her desk lay a blueprint of the diplomatic quarters where Kale was housed. Her fingers traced the routes he commonly took, her mind racing through scenarios. Each potential plan was methodically evaluated for risks and outcomes. Beside the blueprints, a digital pad filled with notes and observations buzzed with incoming data. Her colleague, Damon, a strategist and her second-in-command, entered the room, his presence marked by a soft chime as the door slid open. "Got a minute?" he asked, holding up a tablet with fresh intel. "Make it quick," Alara responded without looking up from her work. Damon walked over and placed the tablet in front of her. "Security's been beefed up around Kale's quarters since yesterday. Seems like your little stunt with the surveillance drone didn't go unnoticed." Alara sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. We need a new angle. Close quarters approach is too risky now. Any ideas? Actually, yes, Damon said, pulling up a file on the tablet. Kale is scheduled to attend a cultural exchange event at the Civic Center 3 days from now. It's public, with minimal security to keep the atmosphere welcoming. That's our window. Alara nodded slowly, her brain shifting gears as she considered the implications. We need a distraction, something big but not lethal. I can blend in with the event staff. Get close. Damon grinned. I thought you might say that. I've arranged for a small smoke device to be smuggled in. It's harmless but should cause enough chaos for you to do your thing. Perfect, Alara murmured, her eyes already scanning the layout of the Civic Center on another screen. And escape routes? Backstage leads to the service corridors. From there, you can exit through the maintenance hatch that opens near the river. It's secluded and away from the main exit points, Damon explained, highlighting the route on the map. Alara stood, stretching her muscles, feeling the familiar thrill of a challenge. All right, get the device ready. I'll prep the rest. We need this to go smoothly. No mistakes. Damon nodded. Understood. I'll back you up from the control room. We'll have eyes on you the entire time. As Damon left, Alara turned back to her screens, her gaze settling on a live feed of Kale. He was talking animatedly with a group of human diplomats, his gestures calm and measured. She watched him, a pang of something unfamiliar fluttering in her chest. Was it doubt, or perhaps admiration? Shaking her head, she dismissed the thought. Emotions were a liability she couldn't afford. Focus, she whispered to herself, taking a deep breath. The plan was set, and she had a job to do. Despite the complexities of her feelings, the mission was clear. Kale was a target, and she was the blade. The stakes were higher than ever, but Alara was ready. After all, failure was not a word in her vocabulary. The Civic Center was bustling, filled with an array of humans and a few members of Kale's entourage from Virex, mingling under the guise of cultural exchange. Vibrant banners hung from the ceiling, and stalls showcasing human and Virexian artifacts lined the walls, creating an atmosphere of shared curiosity and tentative friendship. Despite the apparent goodwill, an undercurrent of tension threaded through the crowd, a remnant of the escalating anti-alien sentiments among certain human factions. Commander Jack Mason patrolled the perimeter, his eyes scanning the crowd for any signs of trouble. His communicator buzzed discreetly. It was Alara checking in before she executed her plan. Commander, everything's in place. Initiating in 5. Alara's voice was calm, almost too calm. Proceed with caution, Alara. Remember, the goal is to control the situation, not escalate it, Jack responded, his tone stern. Nearby, Kale was deeply engaged in a conversation with Dr. Alan Harris, discussing the technological advancements of Virex that could benefit human agriculture. Kale's enthusiasm was palpable, his hands moving gracefully as he described techniques that were light years ahead of human capabilities. As Alara, disguised as one of the event's staff, moved closer to her target, her internal conflict grew. Observing Kale's genuine interest in aiding humanity conflicted with her mission's deadly purpose. She tucked a small device into her sleeve, a tool that would soon create a smokescreen, allowing her to isolate Kale momentarily. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hall as a group of protesters broke through the security barriers, waving anti-alien placards and shouting slurs. The crowd recoiled, and chaos ensued as security rushed to contain the situation. Now's my chance, Alara thought. But her resolve wavered when a child near the front of the stage began to cry, frightened by the commotion. Kale's reaction was immediate. He moved towards the child, his demeanor calm and soothing. His concern in the midst of danger softened Alara's resolve for a moment. However, duty overcame hesitation. She activated the smoke device, and a thick gray fog enveloped the area. Screams and confusion multiplied as people scrambled. Alara advanced toward Kale, her knife concealed and ready. But as she reached him, Kale, seemingly aware of her presence, turned to face her directly, his eyes not condemning but understanding. Why? He asked simply, his voice low enough for only Alara to hear over the chaos. Alara froze, the knife's edge a whisper away from Kale. Her hand trembled, not with fear, but with uncertainty. This wasn't the face of an enemy. This was someone who had just comforted a scared child. Could she carry out her mission based on orders alone? Before she could decide, Jack intervened, having noticed her approach on the surveillance feeds. Alara, stand down! He shouted, making his way through the crowd, his own doubts about the mission surfacing as he observed Kale's actions. The smoke began to clear, and Alara slowly lowered her weapon, stepping back as Jack reached them. The protesters were being corralled, and the panic subsided, but the impact of the moment lingered. Jack eyed Alara with a mix of disappointment and relief. "We need to reassess our strategy," he said quietly to her, then turned to Kale with an apologetic expression. "Kale, I apologize for this disruption. It seems we have much to discuss." Kale nodded, his gaze shifting between Alara and Jack, a silent acknowledgement of the complexity of their situation. As the crowd began to calm, Alara stepped back into the shadows, her mind racing with doubt. This mission had shaken her not because of its danger, but because of the moral questions it raised. How could she continue when her target might be the very catalyst needed to advance humanity, not its doom? The clash of civilizations was no longer just between humans and aliens, but within her own beliefs. In the wake of the chaotic event at the Civic Center, Alara found herself increasingly isolated as she grappled with the moral implications of her assignment. The foiled attempt and Kale's gentle inquiry haunted her thoughts. Despite this, she was a professional, and failure was not an option she was willing to entertain without one last effort. 2 days later, at a serene botanical garden where Kale was scheduled to speak about environmental conservation, a subject he was passionately vocal about, Alara prepared for her second attempt. This time the plan was direct and deadly. A sniper attack from a concealed location overlooking the garden. Damon, still her loyal ally despite his own growing reservations, coordinated the logistics. He set up communication links and ensured Alara had a clear line of sight. "You're sure about this?" he asked through the comm link, his voice tinged with concern. "It has to be done. We can't afford distractions. Kale's vision might be grand, but it's not aligned with our directives." Alara responded, her voice steely, trying to convince herself as much as Damon. As Kale began his discourse, surrounded by lush greenery and an audience captivated by his vision of a symbiotic relationship between humans and nature, Alara positioned herself. Her finger caressed the trigger, her scope fixed on Kale, who stood illuminated by the soft afternoon light. But as she watched him through the sniper scope, Alara saw not a target, but a being full of conviction and hope. Kale spoke of growth, renewal, and the potential for a united galactic community. His words resonated with the crowd, and even through the lens, Alara felt their impact. "Alara, what's your status?" Damon's voice crackled in her ear, pulling her back from her hesitation. I'm on it," she murmured, her resolve faltering. Just as she prepared to refocus, a sudden movement at the edge of her vision caught her attention. A young boy had wandered slightly away from the crowd, chasing a fluttering butterfly. The innocence of the moment, coupled with Kale's ongoing speech about protecting future generations, struck a chord in her. With a deep, involuntary sigh, Alara lowered her rifle. "Damon, abort. I can't. We can't do this. Not like this," she whispered, a mix of frustration and relief washing over her. There was a pause on the line before Damon replied, his voice heavy. "Copy that. Returning to base." Alara packed up her gear, her thoughts a whirlwind of conflict and confusion. As she retreated, she glanced back at the crowd, seeing the faces lit with inspiration from Kale's words, and felt an unfamiliar pang of hope herself. Later that evening, Jack summoned her to a secure location, a dimly lit, sparsely furnished room that served as a crisis meeting point. Jack's expression was grim but not surprised as he greeted her. "Alara, I watched everything. You had him in your sights," he stated plainly, crossing his arms. "I know. I couldn't do it, Jack. Not after seeing all of this. His intentions, his actions. They're not our enemy. Maybe it's time we reconsider what we're fighting for," Alara confessed, the weight of her words hanging heavily between them. Jack studied her for a moment, his features softening. "I've been having my own doubts, Alara. Maybe it's time we bring this to the higher-ups. If Kale really can offer what he promises, perhaps we need to listen." Relief and resolve filled Alara. She was not alone in her doubts, and perhaps, just maybe, there was a way forward that didn't involve violence. "Thank you, Jack. Let's figure this out, together." As they left the meeting room, the weight of their decisions loomed large, but so did the possibility of change. Their path forward was uncertain, fraught with political and personal risk, but for the first time, Alara felt that the right decision might also be the most difficult one. In the aftermath of the failed assassination attempt, Alara and Jack found themselves at a crossroads. The clear view of Kale's character and intentions had shifted their perspective drastically. Rather than seeing him as a target, they began to see him as a potential ally. Yet, working with Kale meant contravening direct orders, a move that could be seen as treasonous. Alara spent the evening in her apartment, poring over all the information she had on Kale and his planet, Virex. Her room was cluttered with surveillance photos, intercepted communications, and her own extensive notes. As she reviewed the data, she couldn't help but feel a growing respect for Kale's commitment to peace and advancement for all beings. The next morning, Alara met Jack at a discreet cafe to discuss their next steps. They sat at a corner table, away from any prying ears. "We need to figure out if Kale is truly as benevolent as he seems. If he is, we might have to protect him," Jack said, his voice low and serious. Alara nodded, her mind racing with the potential consequences. "If we go against our orders, we're putting everything on the line. Our careers, our lives, maybe even the safety of this colony," she replied, her tone equally grave. As they strategized, a message from Damon popped up on Alara's device. It was terse, urgent. "Need to meet. Now. Have info." She showed Jack, and they quickly left for their secure facility. Damon was waiting for them, his expression tense. "I've intercepted communications from a faction within our government. They're not just planning to take Kale out. They want to use his death as a spark to ignite a war with Virex," he revealed, handing over the encrypted files. The documents laid out a chilling plan. Assassinate Kale and frame Virex for a retaliatory attack on human outposts. It was a ploy to rally public support for a war that would expand human territory, but at enormous cost. "We can't let this happen," Jack said, his decision firm. "Kale's offer of shared knowledge and technology is genuine. He could help us avoid a lot of suffering and loss." "Then we protect him. We expose this plot and show everyone the truth," Alara stated, her resolve hardening. "Damon, keep digging. We need more evidence. Jack, we should warn Kale." Agreeing, Jack arranged a private meeting with Kale, taking every precaution to ensure their conversation wouldn't be monitored. They met in a secluded section of the botanical gardens, the same place Alara had once aimed to end his life. "Kale, your life is in danger," Jack began without preamble, his face solemn. "There are elements within our government who wish to see you dead. They plan to use your assassination as a pretext for war." Kale's reaction was calm, his gaze steady. "I suspected my journey here might stir such shadows. I'm grateful for your honesty and protection." Alara stepped forward, the weight of her previous actions heavy on her shoulders. "I was one of those sent to kill you. I can't change that, but I can help make things right." Kale nodded, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding. "To seek peace is to navigate dark waters. I accept your help, and together, perhaps we can illuminate a better path." Their meeting concluded with a new alliance formed, one based on mutual trust and a shared goal of averting war. As they parted ways, Alara felt a cautious hope. This was the start of something significant, not just for her and Jack, but for all of humanity. The alliance between Alara, Jack, and Kale had forged a new sense of purpose, but it also painted targets on their backs. As they worked to expose the conspiracy within the government, the stakes were higher than ever. Their movements and communications were cloaked in layers of secrecy, knowing that any slip could lead to catastrophic outcomes. One evening, as Alara reviewed the latest set of encrypted messages Damon had intercepted, her secure line buzzed. It was Jack, and his tone was urgent. "We've got a problem. There's a leak. Our plan has been compromised," he disclosed. Alara's heart sank. "What happened?" "They know, Alara. They know we're working with Kale. I don't know how, but they've been on to us for days now. A strike team is moving to capture Kale tonight." Jack's voice was a mix of anger and concern. Without hesitation, Alara grabbed her gear. "Where is he?" "At the diplomatic quarters. I'm heading there now. Meet me as soon as you can," Jack instructed, ending the call abruptly. Racing against time, Alara maneuvered through the darkened streets of the colony, her mind reeling from the betrayal. She wondered how their plan had been leaked and whether there was a mole within their tight-knit team. These thoughts were quickly shelved as she reached the diplomatic quarters, where the tension in the air was palpable. Jack was already there, coordinating with a few trusted allies to form a protective barrier around Kale's residence. Alara joined him, and together they prepared to defend Kale against the imminent assault. As the attack began, flashes of gunfire lit the night. Alara and Jack fought back to back, their years of training and experience keeping them one step ahead of the attackers. Amid the chaos, Alara spotted a figure trying to slip into Kale's quarters, a government agent she recognized as one of their own. Seizing a moment, Alara tackled the agent, pinning him to the ground. "Why?" she demanded, her voice filled with betrayal. The agent laughed bitterly. You think you're saving the world by siding with an alien? You're traitors to your own kind. Before Ilara could respond, Jack called out to her. Ilara, now's not the time. We need to get Kale out of here. They regrouped, extracting Kale just as reinforcements arrived to quash the strike team. Once safe, they confronted the reality of their situation. Their plan to expose the conspiracy was no longer just about preventing war. It was also about clearing their names and reclaiming the truth. Kale, ever the voice of reason, spoke up. This conflict within your ranks is deeper than just fear or hatred against Virexians. It's a struggle for the soul of your people. I will stand with you, for in your fight for truth, we see the best of what humanity can be. Ilara, moved by Kale's words and determined to see this through, nodded. We need to go public with everything. The conspiracy, the attempts on your life, everything. Jack agreed. It's time. We'll arrange a broadcast to the entire colony. If we're going down, we're taking the real traitors with us. Together, they planned their next moves, the weight of their decisions bearing down on them, but also forging them into something stronger. This was no longer just about diplomacy or covert operations. It was about standing in the light and fighting for a future where humans and aliens could coexist in peace. The strategy was clear. Expose the government conspiracy and galvanize public opinion to prevent the engineered war against the Virexians. Ilara, Jack, and Kale worked tirelessly, gathering undeniable evidence and coordinating with media allies who were sympathetic to their cause. The plan was to hold a live broadcast revealing everything, a move that was as risky as it was necessary. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the colony slept, the trio met in a secure, undisclosed location, a hidden studio equipped with broadcasting capabilities that Damon had set up. Are we sure about this? Damon asked, looking around at the group, his expression fraught with concern. It's our best shot at stopping this madness, Jack responded, checking his watch. We go live in 2 hours. Is everything set? Damon nodded. We're ready. The signal scramblers will keep us hidden long enough to get our message out. Ilara turned to Kale, who had remained silent, his gaze contemplative. You don't have to be part of the broadcast. It's enough that you've given us the information. Kale shook his head, his voice firm. My involvement is crucial. It will show unity and the possibility of peace. This is about more than just avoiding war. It's about setting a precedent for how humanity handles its fear of the unknown. As they prepared, Ilara double-checked the evidence files, her hands steady despite the storm raging inside her. She had transformed from an assassin with a single target to a key player in a movement that might reshape human-alien relations forever. The broadcast went live at dawn, breaking the morning's calm with revelations that shocked the colony and beyond. Ilara began, revealing her role and the original orders to assassinate Kale. Jack outlined the conspiracy, detailing how certain factions within the government had plotted to ignite a war for profit and power. Finally, Kale spoke, offering a vision of peace and mutual prosperity, showing how Virexian technology could aid in human advancements without subjugation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the colony, citizens gathered in public spaces, watching the revelations unfold. Security forces, unsure of whom to support, hesitated, which gave the movement against the war a crucial window to gain momentum. Meanwhile, the conspirators scrambled to regain control of the narrative, but the evidence presented was too compelling. High-ranking officials who had remained in the shadows were now exposed, their roles in the conspiracy laid bare for all to see. In the chaotic hours that followed, key figures in the government were arrested, and emergency sessions of the Colonial Council were called to address the crisis. Public opinion, once manipulated by fear, now rallied behind Ilara, Jack, and Kale. Jack, standing beside Ilara as they watched the reports coming in, let out a long-held breath. We've done it, Ilara. We've actually done it. Ilara nodded, allowing herself a small smile. We turned the tides, yes, but this is just the beginning, Jack. There's a lot of work to do to rebuild trust and move forward. Kale joined them, his eyes bright with unspoken gratitude. Today, you have redefined what it means to be human. You chose truth over fear, unity over division. That is the strength of your people. As they looked out over the crowds gathering in peace, it was clear that a new chapter was beginning for humanity. One where they stood together, not just with each other, but with those from other worlds. The battle for peace was far from over. But for the first time, the path forward was lit with hope and the promise of a shared future. In the aftermath of the broadcast, the colony of Verdana was transformed. The revelation of the conspiracy had ignited a societal shift, uniting the people in a call for transparency and peace. The Colonial Council was restructured, with leaders committed to integrity and cooperation with Kale and the Virexians. The instigators of the war plot faced justice, and the atmosphere was charged with a new sense of purpose and possibility. Elara, once a shadow operative, emerged as a figure of justice, her story inspiring others to question and challenge the status quo. Jack, recognized for his bravery and leadership, played a crucial role in the new council, working to fortify the bonds between humans and aliens. In the vibrant heart of the colony, a celebration was underway. The central plaza, once a site of division, was now filled with music and laughter, humans and Virexians mingling freely. Stalls displayed Virexian technology alongside human crafts, symbolizing the new partnership. As the festivities continued, Elara found herself beside Kale, watching the joyous scene unfold. "It's hard to believe, isn't it?" she remarked, her voice tinged with awe. Kale smiled, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "What you have achieved is remarkable, not just in averting a war, but in proving that fear does not have to dictate the future." Jack joined them, clapping a hand on Elara's shoulder. "You did good, Elara. We all did. Look at this. People actually believe in the future now, a future we all have a hand in shaping." The trio walked through the plaza, greeted warmly by those they passed. Children played in the background, their games weaving seamlessly between human and Virexian technologies, a living testament to the new era of shared knowledge and cultural exchange. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a stage was set for speeches. Community leaders, both human and Virexian, spoke of unity, courage, and the endless possibilities now within reach. When it was Kale's turn, the crowd hushed, eager to hear from the being who had been the catalyst for so much change. "Today, we stand together, not as separate species, but as partners," Kale began, his voice clear and strong. "The journey here was fraught with challenges, but it has forged a bond that is unbreakable. Let us continue to build on this foundation, explore the stars together, and face any adversity as one." As the crowd erupted in applause, Elara felt a profound peace settle within her. The path ahead would require hard work and dedication, but for the first time, she was truly optimistic about the future. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Elara and Kale found themselves alone, looking out over the city lights. "I once thought my purpose was defined by the missions I was given," Elara confessed, her voice soft. "But now, I see a different path, one that we're forging together." Kale turned to her, his hand reaching out to gently grasp hers. "And I, who came here with hope, found not only allies, but friends. Perhaps even more," he said, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Elara looked into his eyes, her heart full. "Yes, perhaps even more." As they stood together, the barriers of worlds and wars behind them, the future stretched out vast and promising. Humanity and Virex were united, not just by treaties and agreements, but by bonds of trust and friendship. In the true spirit of their newfound alliance, they faced the horizon together, ready for whatever new adventures awaited among the stars. The story of Elara and Kale, a tale of conflict turned to camaraderie, would be remembered not as a footnote of what could have been, but as the dawn of a new era for all.